Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Julie Haskett. I'm the Senior Manager of Corporate Communications at Chugach Electric. Tonight is a very unique opportunity for you, our members, to engage with our management and get an update on what's going on at Chugach and ask questions. So we're really appreciative that you're here. We have a new video at Chugach that we had made. It's kind of like, what is Chugach? So we're going to show you our video, and then Director Wiggin will come up and do an introduction.
Since 1948, Chugach Electric Association has powered the lives of Alaskans safely, reliably, and affordably. Founded as a cooperative, we're owned by our members and guided by the people we serve. Chugach is governed by a 7-member board of directors, elected by and from our membership. The board sets policy and provides direction to Chugach's chief executive officer, ensuring that every decision reflects the best interests of our members and the communities where we live and work. As Alaska's largest electric utility, Chugach serves more than 113,000 locations and over 90,000 members across Anchorage and the Upper Kenai Peninsula. Chugach generates most of its power from natural gas from the Cook Inlet Basin. This direct access to energy helps keep rates low and service reliable. We're home to the 2 most efficient power plants on the rail belt. The South Central Power Project, commissioned in 2013, delivers 200.2 megawatts through a 3-on-1 combined cycle design that maximizes fuel efficiency by capturing waste heat to generate additional electricity. This system uses less fuel and produces fewer emissions per unit of electricity produced. The George M. Sullivan Power Plant 2A, commissioned in 2016, adds another 120 megawatts with a similarly efficient 2-on-1 combined cycle configuration. Together, these facilities form the backbone of dependable, affordable energy for our members year-round. The future of Chugach is clean and sustainable. We're expanding our generation mix with wind, hydro, and solar, and investing in new technologies that strengthen grid reliability. Our 75% ownership in a 40-megawatt battery energy storage system at our headquarters complex came online in 2024, improving grid stability and further reducing reliance on natural gas. We're also a proud co-owner of the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project and full owner of the Cooper Lake Hydroelectric Project, while utilizing clean power from the largest hydro plant on the rail belt, the Bradley Lake Hydroelectric Project. Hydropower remains Alaska's lowest cost renewable resource, providing clean, dispatchable energy that supports reliable power and affordable rates. These investments support Chugach's commitment to reducing carbon intensity by at least 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040, with no negative material impact on rates or reliability. We're leading the way in beneficial electrification, supporting electric vehicles, efficient heat pumps, and energy-saving technologies. Through programs and incentives, Chugach helps members save energy, reduce costs, and build a cleaner Alaska. Through it all, our greatest asset is our workforce. Our roughly 450 employees live and work right here in Alaska, helping meet the needs of our members from the Anchorage headquarters. Their dedication keeps our system strong and the lights on. We're proud to give back, volunteering hundreds of hours each year to a variety of local nonprofits, strengthening communities across the state. As a 100% Alaska-based workforce, we take pride in serving the place we call home, working together to build a reliable, more sustainable energy future, one that balances member needs, environmental stewardship, and long-term sustainability. Chugach Electric, powering Alaska's future, today and for generations to come.
Thank you, Julie. I am Mark Wiggin. I'm the chair of the Chugach Board. Thank you all for being here. We're pleased that you're here tonight. It's a very unique opportunity for you to hear from staff and just a little bit from the board. I do want to let you know we have other board members here. Dan Rogers is on the board. Catherine Jernstrom. I don't see any. Oh, Jim Nordland back there. So Catherine is one of our newer board members. Jim's been on the board before, and he's probably got the longest tenure, and so it's glad to have you guys here. I wanted to let you know that in addition to this meeting, which is going to be relatively informal, we are hoping that you'll ask questions, and we have the annual meeting coming up on May the 29th at Change Point. It's going to be a much bigger event. There'll be a lot of things to do. It'll be a little bit more difficult to ask questions, so please, if you have things you want to find out, ask us tonight. I'm reading down my list here. It is very important for the board to engage with members as much as possible, and so tonight or in the future, if you have questions, you have concerns, you can write to staff, of course, you can write to us individually or us as a board. So as Chugach Co-op members, I would say, please stay in touch with us, let us know what concerns you or what we're doing right or wrong. We'd be happy to hear your issues. We have the monthly Chugach Electric board meetings. We also have committee meetings. We'd love to have more participation and engagement from the members at those meetings. So please look on the websites for a schedule for when we have those meetings. And as chair of the board, I do try to keep the meetings I run on schedule. So we get in at 4 and I try to get us out by 8. And I think that's hit all the bullet points. But thank you very much. I hope you find tonight interesting and informative. We love to have folks listen in. I'm going to invite Arthur Miller, our CEO, to come up, and Arthur is going to be the MC for a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Really, thank you all for being here this evening. It really is a pleasure. It's an honor to have you attend this meeting tonight, especially showing you are engaged members of this cooperative. In fact, you are owners of the electric cooperative, and this is a great opportunity to share with you which direction Chugach is headed in, not only in the next couple of years, but really for the long term. I think it's also important to note that the success of this company is not from one person, not from 2 or 3 people. It's the collective efforts of the entire workforce. That means including the board of directors, our linemen, our member service representatives, our IT personnel, our transmission engineers, our distribution engineers, every facet of electric utility operations, right-of-way agents, the regulatory department, the accounting department, everybody working together, our HR department, working together to make this organization what it is today and what it's going to be in the future. I also want to recognize very quickly our senior executive staff. I'll start to my left, Matt Clarkson, our Chief Legal Officer, Sherry Hires, our Chief Financial Officer, Katie Millen, our Vice President of HR, Al Rudek, our Chief Strategic Officer, and Andrew Laughlin, our Chief Operating Officer. Here we go. I think I would be remiss if I didn't start the discussion this evening about changes that are occurring in the electric utility industry. Really, 3 fundamental drivers are changing the whole structure of our industry. Number 1, decentralization of the power grid. 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, you could count on one hand how many customers had their own generation. Today, we have about 1,400 customers that have solar or wind at their location of business or their residence. That trend is going to continue to increase, and we're going to see utility operations being more integrated with customers as we go forward. We're going to see the ability to optimize the utilization of technology, but also of assets through that direct interconnection. The second factor that's driving the change is decarbonization. We're seeing decarbonization both at the utility level, that we're seeing additional renewable generation being placed on the system. We're seeing a heightened interest for operational efficiencies, hydrothermal coordination, partnering with other utilities for greater efficiencies in generation.
Arthur, I'm going to switch your mic out. That was kind of cutting out.
Thank you. And that's on the utility side, but we're also seeing decarbonization on the customer side. The adoption of electric vehicles, battery-operated tools and equipment. Heat pump technology, not only for heating, but for hot water heating, dryers. These technologies are going to continue to increase as we go through time. Some of these are not economic right now in Anchorage. You're better off from a cost perspective to heat with natural gas. But that technology is changing. It's advancing all the time. These changes in the industry are driven by what? Technology. We are really on the cusp of significant advances in technology across the board. That's fundamentally changing the operation of the utilities. From my perspective, if we're proactive, it's a phenomenal opportunity as we go forward. For Alaska, our challenges are exacerbated, if you will, by what? Gas supply. In 2022, Hilcorp announced they would not be extending long-term contracts with utilities in South Central Alaska. That impacts the utilities in South Central differently because of the contracts that we all have. For Chugach, our contract with Hilcorp, where we receive about 40% of our gas requirements today, expires at the end of first quarter of 2028. That's different for NSTAR, different for Matanuska, different for Homer Electric. So that's I'm sure you've heard and read a lot about in the news on what's going on with natural gas, and we'll talk about that this evening. But I wanted to bring this up in the structure of the industry, because when we look at the agenda this evening, it's going to touch on these items that we're talking about that are structural changes in the industry. And we have, as a utility, have to be proactive and take advantage of these opportunities that are out there. I also want to mention, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll try to address as many questions as we can as we go through. And then whatever is left over, we can wait till the end of the discussion. So first of all, some background information on Chugach. We provide power to about 1 in 3 Alaskans. We have about 450 employees. We're the 14th largest electric cooperative in the country based on asset value of about $1.8 billion. We have over 900 megawatts of installed generation capacity. We have over 470 miles of transmission lines and just under 3,400 miles of distribution. Importantly, 65% of our distribution lines are underground. And if you look on your electric bill, we have a 2% Municipality of Anchorage undergrounding ordinance, and those funds are used for overhead to underground line conversions. And that's an ongoing program that we prioritize certain areas within our service area in Anchorage, within the Municipality of Anchorage, and has been a very successful program. We're also extremely unique as an electric cooperative. Not only do we have generation, transmission, distribution assets, that means fully integrated, we also have a direct interest in the gas field. Very unusual for a utility to have a direct ownership. And we'll talk more about the successes of our direct ownership in that field as part of this presentation. Our generation and power purchases are shown on this graph. A couple things I really want to point out. Number one is that the main generation from Chugach's system is from the South Central Power Project and from the Sullivan Power Plant. Those are the 2 most efficient generation resources in the entire state of Alaska, thermal generation resources. Importantly, you'll notice on the left, on the top left, Beluga Power Plant and Beluga River Unit. The Beluga Power Plant was put in service in the 1960s, and that was put over at that location literally right on top of a gas field that provided gas for decades from that field directly to the power plant, and among the cheapest generation in the rail belt at that time. But technology changed, and we've transitioned that facility from a base load unit to really a peaking unit and an emergency standby unit. That unit today, the units that are over there today are still very critical to our operations. There is one gas line on the west side of Cook Inlet between Beluga and Anchorage. If something were to happen to that main line, the deliverability of gas into Anchorage to run our power plants, to run Matanuska Electric Association's power plant at EGS would be compromised. We can run Beluga right over at that location from the gas in that gas field, and we have transmission lines that provide power from Beluga to Anchorage. It also provides security when we have volcanic events. If we have an ash cloud that comes over Anchorage, we will shut down our most efficient, valuable units on our system and run Beluga and other generation to preserve the integrity of our primary generation units. I would be remiss if I didn't identify hydro. There's 3 primary hydro projects in the rail belt in south central Alaska. Bradley Lake Hydro Project is owned by the state of Alaska, and all the rail belt utilities from Fairbanks all the way to Homer have contracts with the Alaska Energy Authority for Bradley Lake power. Chugach owns and operates the Cooper Lake Hydro Project directly, and then we also co-own the Clutna Hydro Project with the municipality of Anchorage and Matanuska Electric Association. Importantly, the cost of generation from these 3 hydro projects averages between 4 and 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour. There's not even a close second on the rail belt generation that compares with the cost structure of these hydro projects. The most efficient generation we have at SPP and Sullivan plant, when you add in the cost of fuel and you add in the cost of the fixed cost associated with those plants, you're 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Hydro really is a game changer in the rail belt. And we'll talk more about this as we go through and some of the initiatives that Chugach is undertaking. Hydro is critical in that it allows us to store energy. We can store water and we can save it for the times that we need it. Also, the cost is relatively constant. We don't have significant variation in the cost of hydropower. It's around 4 cents, 4.5 cents. Yeah, it goes up and down depending on how much water we run through it on an average basis. We do have maintenance activities and capital investments associated, but they behave very, very well. And they're 100+ year projects. Our projects at SPP and Sullivan plant, 35-year life. We have life extensions that we can do. We can keep doing generation overhauls. We can extend the life. But on the hydro projects, it's a different ballgame that we're playing in altogether. So very attractive from a generation resource and insulates us from the vagaries of world market conditions with gas supply. Right now, we're just about under 80% reliant on natural gas. We're just under 20% hydro, a couple of percent wind, and we're just starting now to get more of a footprint on solar. What we really want is diversification in our generation portfolio. We don't want to be reliant on predominantly on one technology, on natural gas in this case. We want diversification in our generation portfolio, and that's a direction that this organization is taking. I want to switch gears, talk explicitly about natural gas. And as I mentioned earlier, about 60% of our gas is sourced from our direct ownership in the Beluga River Unit gas field across Cook Inlet. We own about 67% of that field. Hillcorp Alaska owns the remaining 1/3. We acquired the field, a 10% working interest in the field in 2016, and then we acquired an additional 56% with our acquisition of Anchorage Municipal Light and Power in 2020. Importantly, this field was a top producing gas field in Cook Inlet in both 2024 and 2025. In fact, in 2025, 25% of the gas production out of the entire Cook Inlet Basin was from the Beluga River unit, a very successful gas field. In fact, from 2016 through February of this year, we have saved our members about $146 million through our direct ownership in that field. That is, by comparing the cost that we incur to produce gas out of that field to the prevailing market price of Cook Inlet gas. Those are savings that translate to direct reductions on a dollar-for-dollar basis to your electric bill. The remaining 40% of our gas is sourced from our long-term contract with Hilcorp Alaska, which is now becoming a short-term contract that expires at the end of first quarter of 2028. The real question that we are faced with is with the expiration of this agreement and Hilcorp pulling back from really having a dominant presence for gas production in the Cook Inlet Basin is how do we replace that gas? As we look into the field, into the future, we know that the supply-demand imbalance is increasing. And what this means is we need to find another source of natural gas. It also means continued efforts to diversify our generation portfolio. Ideally, when we look at natural gas supply, we want in-state gas, whether it's from the Cook Inlet Basin, whether it's from somewhere else in South Central Alaska, or the North Slope. We want in-state gas. However, our balance sheet just cannot support a pipeline from the North Slope to South Central Alaska. So we are looking at different options on how do we fill the gap. What import structure is that going to look like? And that's what we're working on right now. We do hope the gas line is constructed and built, but can it be built by 2029? That's what we need to find out. We cannot operate on the basis of hope or I believe we'll have gas in 2029. We need 100% assurance. That's non-negotiable. The other critical element, whether we import liquefied natural gas or we have gas from the North Slope, is additional gas storage, which is fundamental to our operations. Right now, there are two commercial viable entities that provide service, gas storage service in the Cook Inlet Basin. Hilcorp Alaska just started earlier this year, late last quarter and earlier this year. And then there's also Cook Inlet Natural Gas Storage Alaska, or CINGSA, started up about 12, 13 years ago. Relatively low quantities of volumetric gas. CINGSA can hold about 13 BCF of gas. The whole Cook Inlet market, if you will, in South Central Alaska is in the low 70s for BCF, so it's not a big enough storage facility to meet the needs of the utilities. Hilcorp's storage facility is mammoth, huge. They can even expand it, about 40 BCF. However, when we talk gas storage, there's two fundamental components that we have to be worried about. One is how big the tank is, and the second is what's the pressure that we can get the gas out of. CINGSA, the pressure in CINGSA is remarkable, works very, very well. However, it doesn't have a real huge storage tank. But at the same token, Hilcorp has a much larger reservoir, but the pressure is not at where we can get extracted at the rates that we need to. Director Wiggin asked, how much gas do we burn a year? We burn about 12 BCF a year. So we are evaluating additional gas storage opportunities in the Cook Inlet Basin, ideally on the west side of Cook Inlet, because we want to diversify risk. We don't want everything on the east side of Cook Inlet. If something happens to the gas line what we call the SIGS line between the east side of Cook Inlet to the west side. If something happened to that and all of our storage was on the east side, we would be in trouble. If you remember a couple years ago, in late January, Singsa had deliverability issues. Some of the wells, they're having some water in the wells, some sand in the wells that impacted deliverability. At that time, that was the only storage facility available on a commercial basis in the Cook Inlet Basin. We don't want to be in that type of a situation again. We need redundancy. Also, we need storage, whether there's a pipeline or whether we import liquefied natural gas. We need additional storage. Incidentally, the Beluga River unit production has been so successful that Chugach has been able to take some of that gas that was produced in that field and save it for later. We put additional gas in storage. We also entered into commercial agreements with Marathon Petroleum Company and Hillcorp Alaska, where we give them gas and we get most of that gas back at a later point in time. That helps us diversify our risk footprint on our gas supply portfolio. This graph shows what our demand is for natural gas as a utility by the red line, and then underneath the red line it shows the sources of natural gas that allow us to meet our demand. The bottom left corner in orange is our contract with Hillcorp Alaska, and as I said, that expires at the end of first quarter of 2028. The green area represents our direct ownership interest in the Beluga River Unit gas field. That goes until 2035. That is right now the current economic life of that field. So after that, we do updates on the reserves on this field every 3 years, and it has not changed significantly from that time period. We oscillate between 2033, 2034, 2035 in that area, but there's been no significant extensions to that field. This field has been in operation for decades, literally. The area in purple is what I mentioned earlier, and that is this tremendous success that we've had with the operation of the Beluga River Unit gas field. We've been able to take gas from there and that we're not using today and put it in storage or have exchange agreements with Marathon and Hillcorp, and then in return for that, we will get that gas back at the expiration of our contract with Hillcorp at the end of first quarter of 2028. That can fill the gap, but we still have a gap that begins at the end of first quarter of 2029. And that gap could change as we go through time. Incidentally, right now, in reserve, and I say in reserve, that means stored gas and gas that we have under exchange with Marathon and Hillcorp, is over 8 BCF. We are 2/3 of a way already to a full year of an extension, and we still have several years to go. And the production out of the Beluga River unit continues to exceed our expectations and our projections. So we're very happy with how that is. We feel very confident in our position on the natural gas front. But the key as we go forward, how do we fill in the area underneath the red line and the white space above the green and the purple after 2029, first quarter of 2029. And that's where we're looking at importing liquefied natural gas. We certainly do hope and support the pipeline. We're going to have to wait and see how this all flushes out, but this is the direction that we are moving in, and we expect to make really a final decision on the direction that we're going to take here no later than the end of third quarter of this year. And I want to just change gears a little bit and talk about some of our decarbonization initiatives. And when I talk about decarbonization, I'm really talking about lowering our carbon footprint, lowering our carbon emissions. And the Chugach Board of Directors has adopted a triple bottom line philosophy for how do we evaluate our organization. And really it's from not just a financial perspective, but it's also environmental stewardship perspective and a social perspective, taking all three of those into consideration in things that we do and decisions that we make. We also have a goal to reduce our carbon intensity by, it's not stated up here, but it's by at least 35% by 2030 and at least 50% by 2040, with an important caveat: no material negative impact on rates and no degradation to system reliability are really key criteria that we follow. And that's our long-term goal as an organization, to move the company to a lower carbon footprint, but that also means greater diversification in our generation portfolio as we go forward. Some successes we've done this year, these are relatively small solar projects. We put a 75 kW solar installation on the south-facing wall of our South Central Power Project on the top right, and then a ground installation at our Sullivan Power Plant. And then at our new operations building, we put 165 kW solar installation. Incidentally, that's the largest rooftop solar installation in the state of Alaska. So we're excited about that. In addition, in July of last year, the state of Alaska, the first community solar project in the state of Alaska was put in commercial operation. And what this project allows customers to do is to subscribe to solar panels without having to put a solar installation on your house. So many of our customers either don't have the ability to put solar, if you live in an apartment or a condominium building, you may not have the ability to put solar at your roof. But if you still want to participate in solar, you can pay for this service and then subscribe to a certain percentage of the output from the project. This is 100% subscribed right now. We do have a waiting list. We also are looking at phase 2 of a community solar project, and that's still in the works. Hopefully it'll be here in Anchorage. If not, it may be over across the inlet at Beluga. The other area, in fourth quarter of last year, the Chugach Board of Directors approved a 10 megawatt solar project to be located at our Beluga Power Plant across Cook Inlet. This is on both Chugach-owned land and CIRI land, and we expect commercial operation to be in 2027. We're really excited about this. We accelerated this project to take advantage of the federal government's ITC credit, and we can get a significant discount with this installation by having certain milestones met. And that's why we're pursuing this right now in this magnitude for the benefits of that incentive program that's put on by the federal government. In addition to that, earlier this year we embarked formally and made public announcements on 4 hydro sites that we're investigating for a total of 52 megawatts: Boulder Creek, Caribou Creek, Canyon Creek, and Godwin Creek. This is really what we did is we submitted our preliminary application to put basically a stake in the ground that will allow us to spend money to evaluate these sites without another party coming in and taking taking away the projects from us. So it allows us to put that stake in the ground for a 4-year period that could be extended. But it gives us assurance that we will spend money, and then if we decide to go forward with the project, somebody cannot take it out from under us. So we're continuing to work on that. I think it's important to note that even though these are relatively small projects, we did identify, and we started this project in the beginning, over 150 potential hydro sites in South Central Alaska alone. And we had that whittled down to 12, and then we had it whittled down further to 4. Those other sites that we've looked at are still in our reserve bank. So if some of these don't work out, we will move forward and look at other of the sites that we have. If everything goes as planned, we would expect construction to begin in 2033, commercial operation sometime in mid-2035. So a fairly aggressive timeline. Again, we can take advantage of some of the investment tax credits that are done in this area. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dixon diversion. Dixon diversion is diverting glacial meltwater from the Dixon Glacier into the Bradley Lake Hydroelectric Project. This is something that allows us to utilize the Bradley Lake Hydroelectric Project as it is today, but we can increase the amount of water that's put into the reservoir for generation purposes. It will not allow us to increase generation capacity, but what it will do is it will allow us to increase the number of megawatt hours that we run through those two turbines. So we're excited about this. The other benefit of it, it's not just a benefit to Chugach, it's a benefit to every utility in the rail belt, which is wonderful. All the way from Seward to Homer, through Anchorage, Matanuska Electric, all the way to Fairbanks. It benefits all utilities. And again, this is a long-term, long-lived asset. Really, Bradley Lake is fairly young. It was put in service in the early 1990s. It has a significant life ahead of it. And adding more water to that reservoir really is a positive thing. Here's a picture of the location of the 4 hydro sites that we are looking at. You'll notice on the pictures, Godwin Creek, Boulder Creek, and Caribou Creek, that's stored water. And then Canyon Creek is run of the river. So what that really means, just as it says, run of the river is when the water flows down the river. We generate power as the water flows. There's no dam. We don't control that. We take whatever they deliver, whatever the project delivers at that point in time. Stored hydro, we can store it and run it when we need to optimize the system. From a value proposition, stored hydro in general is worth a lot more than run of the river hydro. Both valuable, but stored hydro has greater diversity and benefit from that matter. For that matter, also allows us to regulate intermittent renewable generation resources as well. It's another side benefit. The other benefit of that, it allows us to do a better job to optimize our hydrothermal coordination to reduce our overall cost of power when we can store hydro in that way. I also want to mention, importantly, that the Alaska legislature adopted a rail belt transmission organization, or created a rail belt transmission organization, RTO. And what that did is that socialized, if you will, transmission assets throughout the entire rail belt. Why is that important? Well, it allows us and anybody else to put in generation at any place in the entire rail belt without having pricing distortions from transmission. That has allowed us to look at other locations outside of our service area for financially attractive generation sites, whether it's renewables or other generation. So really this is a good foundation as we move forward. Most states in the lower 48 do have basically unified transmission rates. Another way of saying it, everybody pays basically the same rate for use of a transmission system across the entire system. But it allows utilities to put in generation without having distortions in pricing. And why is that important? Well, if we had these projects located, let's say Golden Valley and Fairbanks wanted to buy power or put it in generation in Homer, right now they would have to pay a charge to Homer, to Chugach, to the Alaska Energy Authority to get that power up to Fairbanks. Now they just pay one cost, and they're agnostic to where that power comes from. That allows more economic generation to be put online. So a very significant positive benefit for the entire rail belt. We also are embarking on really a significant effort to advance electric vehicles in our service area. Electric vehicles are important. Our electric load has dropped on average 1% a year over the last 15 years. In fact, even with how cold December was, if you were to look at calendar year 2025 versus calendar year 2024 electric sales, we dropped 2.3%. The first quarter of 2025 was extremely mild, and then it turned toward the latter part of the year, but not enough to make up the difference. Every 1% reduction in sales has about a $2.5 million impact to our fixed cost contribution. Why is that important? Well, electric utilities are heavily capitalized. We are very much dependent on fixed assets to provide electric service. And when our sales drop, that means we have to, unfortunately, the last thing we want to do is raise rates, but we have to make up that volume difference. And that's why beneficial electrification is so important. Every electric vehicle that's added to our system is equivalent to a half of a household load on a monthly basis. It's a significant impact. And also, it's better for the environment, and it's also better for your pocketbook when you look at the price of filling up your car by electricity or gasoline. It's a lot cheaper with electricity. Those battery-operated vehicles are also increasing. The technology is getting better and better. So what we are doing, we have partnered with Three Bears on the Cooper Landing area. They put a new store down there. I don't know if you have been down there recently. We expect this new charger will be in service in second quarter of this year. It's a level 3 charger. You should be able to get a full charge in 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the outside temperature. We're also looking at other sites in Anchorage, in South Anchorage, in Girdwood, a level 3, and then also in Moose Pass and in Seward. Seward will probably be in 2027. The other locations will be we expect to be installed this year. Another important aspect on what we've been working on with the cruise ship industry is interconnection with the electric utility. This is really important because of the air quality, both in Seward and in Whittier when the cruise ships come in. And right now, when cruise ships come in, they don't interconnect with the utility. They run diesel generation while they're in port. So we've been working very well with Holland America and the state of Alaska. We received a grant, and we will be rebuilding the distribution line from our portage substation to this side of the tunnel that goes into Whittier, and then additional upgrades. We expect this to be in service in 2027. These are big loads, by the way. We're talking about 10 to 13 megawatts when they interconnect with our system, which really is, it's significant. How can I put this in the right context? The system load of Seward Electric System is about 8 megawatts, say 8 to 9 megawatts, depending on what time of the year. So one cruise ship coming in is significantly higher than even the whole load requirements of the city of Seward. Yes?
So you're creating this need for load, but we're also, you're creating a need for load, but we also were running out of gas because of the Hillcore cut. So how does that balance out?
Really a good question. So it really is a matter of timing. I think that right now on gas supply, we will not be short on gas supply. We know we're that a date certain we are going to be short. We know we have enough room to meet that requirement, and we will have another alternative source of gas at that point in time. When these other generation resources come on, that's not going to move the needle very much at all in that short a time between now and 2029, is how I would look at that. Very good question. Incidentally, so data centers, I think you've read a lot about data centers and utilities and how are they managing that. That would definitely be, that is an issue. No, we cannot serve a data center today or even next year with our gas supply. That would move the needle significantly. We could not do that. And we've had discussions with data centers in that regard as well. But we can't serve a data center unless we have the gas supply to be able to do it. So that would definitely move the needle. But on something like this, on electric vehicles, it takes a while to adopt electric vehicles. We're laying the foundation to increase that load, really offset some of the load declines that we have experienced. And we will be, I'm not concerned that we're not going to have enough gas in 2029. That issue will be solved. The question is it imported natural gas or is it gas from the pipeline? That really is the question. Very good question. Incidentally, I think it's important to note also the Port of Alaska. Why aren't they interconnecting with Chugach? Well, the tides are really significant in Cook Inlet. And from a safety perspective, they can't shut their machines off. They've got to keep their diesel engines running in the event that they've got to move the ship, so they're not able to do that. They have to keep them running all the time. So that was another area that we had explored with the municipality of Anchorage. So we're excited about this. We expect it, again, to be in service in 2027, mid-2027. Also, I think we've all experienced inflationary pressures over the last 5 years. The electric utility industry was not exempt from that. We've seen extensive cost pressures across the board, not only on our building, our materials, but also on buying new equipment. We've had significant delays in acquiring, the lead time to acquire transformers, upwards of a year or longer, but significant upward pressure on cost for utility operations. This chart shows how much our total retail rates have increased from 2021 through 2025. We're about 15%. The inflation in the Anchorage area has gone up just under 20%. We've had about a 5% reduction in sales. What I want to say on this and really highlight, we take cost pressures very seriously. We do not, a solution is not just to turn and ask for higher rates because of these higher costs. We have to continue to look for operational efficiencies across every facet of our operations, and that's what we're doing. And that's why when you look at this chart and you see our rates have gone up 15%, inflation is higher, a reduction in sales has just the same or a very similar impact as inflation. We've tried to keep the increases in electric rates as low as we possibly could through operational efficiencies. And some examples of that I'll get to here in a second. When we talk about rate changes, we're really looking at two fundamental baskets, if you will. One is the revenue that's coming in the door. If we have increased sales, we can lower electric rates because we have a greater economies of scale and we can spread those fixed costs over a larger number of units. Conversely, when we have lower sales, we have less units to spread those over, and that has an upward pressure on rates. On the cost side, we have inflationary pressures, we have increases in the cost of fuel, and so forth that have an upward pressure on rates. But our job is to look for ways to operate more efficiently and not pass on, to minimize the amount of increases to pass on to our members. And that really is an area that we continue to be focused on, and we're really excited about advances in technology in the utility sector that's going to really allow us to operate more efficiently as we go forward. We're embarking on significant studies, use case studies, to look where, with AI, on certain activities that we do, where we can get a group of employees together and figure out how can we do this task more efficiently with technology and looking at our processes. This is going to be a significant benefit to utility operations as we go forward. It's also important not only leveraging technology and looking at our own processes, but we have to partner with good business partners in the community to look for efficiencies. And I'll give you some examples of some of the areas that Chugach is working on and has worked on for cost reductions. From an operational perspective, we transitioned the operation of the Beluga power plant from a baseload generation facility to a peaking emergency backup facility, and we still had personnel that were out there. And we transferred those personnel to other power plants located here in Anchorage, and we've really reduced operations with technology to allow us basically to run that unit from Anchorage, or all the units from Anchorage. That has resulted in anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million annualized and additional efficiencies or cost savings as a result of that change in process. In addition, we've been power pooling with Matanuska Electric Association. That means we combine our generation resources and we can operate the system in a more efficient way. What does that mean? That means reductions in fuel costs. So we save between $2 and $3 million a year as a result of that combined operation. Incidentally, and I mentioned it earlier, that SPP and the Sullivan Power Plant, the most efficient generation units in the Rail Belt, Chugach with this power pooling agreement provides much of the generation requirements for Matanuska Electric Association. So something that Seward Electric system also benefits from the operations of those units. We're also looking at our assets and how do we maximize the utilization of our assets. When we acquired Municipal Light and Power in 2020, we knew we had to change our operation footprint. We combined our operations to our South Campus. That happened in fourth quarter of last year. And now we have parcels that are available. We can either sell the parcels or we can enter into long-term leases. It's been attractive for us to go on a long-term lease arrangement with those parcels. The monies that we collect from those rental income goes as a direct offset to your electric bill on a dollar-for-dollar basis. So that's in a small way, a way of helping us diversify our portfolio from a financial perspective and a rate perspective, but also in 10 years from now and 20 years from now, we still have ownership of these parcels that could really come in to be really critical for our operations as an electric utility. So we're excited about that. We also have an entirely separate independent communication system. So when we contact our Beluga power plant to run a generator, it's not over AT&T's lines or GCI's lines. We have our own microwave system that operates our infrastructure, not only on generation, but transmission and distribution. But we do have spare bandwidth on portions of our system, and we sell some of that spare bandwidth to other companies in Anchorage, and that money is also used to offset your electric bill. So we're excited about that, and really it's a process by which we can make a little bit more capital investment to get a lot more revenue. And that's been tremendously successful over the years, and we continue to look for opportunities to expand that business footprint. We also have shared services with Hillcorp Alaska. Hillcorp Alaska is the operator of the Beluga River Unit gas field, and Chugach has a camp facility located over there that we use to run our power plant. Well, now we're able to lease out the rooms and the other camp facilities at that facility to Hillcorp, that then we can use those funds for offsetting other costs in our operations. Beluga strategically is a critical location. The gas pipeline, the terminus of that for in-state purposes would be very close to the proximity of the Beluga power plant. Strategically, as I mentioned, it's a critical location for emergency preparedness if something ever happened to the gas line between Anchorage and Beluga. or volcanic activity, or if there was a major earthquake, it's a redundant backup generation supply. Those units, however, are not as efficient as the units here in Anchorage. However, they will provide power in an emergency, and they really are critical to our operations. Yes?
I think you downplay how important that remote operation of the power plant. Would you tell everybody how big that power plant is that is operated from here? Very few people, if anybody, over there.
Yes, we can operate. It's some of the units we have mothballed, but the total generation capacity over there is over 300 megawatts. It's a significant resource and critical to our operations. And strategically, we're going to keep that asset for long-term strategic purposes, but it is critical, and we were able to adopt technology to allow us to do remote operation of the facility. So here's a comparison of electric rate levels, comparing Chugach South with Chugach North. The North District is a former MLMP service area, and then comparing rate levels with us and other railroad utilities. So very competitive rates. We were continuing to look for opportunities to bring our rates down as much as we possibly can, and that is an ongoing effort as we go through time. I do want to hit on resiliency. And when we're talking about all the activities that Chugach is doing, what are we really going after? We are going after resiliency as an electric utility for long-term success. If you look at some of the challenges a lot of the utilities have faced in the lower 48, the wildfire situation, very unfortunate situations, but who would have ever thought that suburbs of Los Angeles would have been burned as much as they were because of the wildfires? I drove through there last summer and saw the damage, really remarkable on what happened. And we look also at Hawaii. So we need to look at, from a utility operational perspective, to build resilience throughout our operations. That means for reliability as well. It also means hardening our system for wildfire mitigation. It means making sure that financially we are rock solid and we have diversification in our overall portfolio, whether it's revenue or generation. We want diversification. So as I mentioned, one of the big efforts we have undertaken is vegetation management and wildfire risk mitigation. We put together plans, documents that memorialize how we are operating the system, actions that we are taking. We've been very aggressive in our line clearing activities, both over at Beluga and Tyonek, and also in the Kenai Peninsula and Moose Pass and Cooper Landing area. In addition to that, on the Anchorage hillside, we've been extremely aggressive in doing line clearing. Please recognize, out of anybody, I can assure you, out of anybody in here, I love trees more than anybody, but I know how important it is from a safety perspective to do appropriate line clearing. It really is important. And we were going to continue doing efforts in that area. Overhead to underground conversions, that does help mitigate some of the impacts associated with that. But we have been changing from an operations perspective, put a significant effort in line clearing activities. That's going to continue as we move forward. So I'm sure a lot of you have driven south on the new Seward Highway and have noticed the new transmission towers that are being constructed between Anchorage and the Kenai Peninsula. This is a project that was started in 2012, and we're about 50% of the way through. It's a critical line. It's 50 to 60 years old. We've increased the infrastructure from 115 kV to 230 kV, which allows us to have more robust infrastructure. That is, the conductors and the poles are a lot more stout to be able to withstand avalanches, high winds, and so forth to help reduce outages. We expect this project to be completed by 2032 approximately. Importantly, the federal government just came out with a grant opportunity. We are now working with the Alaska Energy Authority, the state of Alaska, to jointly partner with them for up to a $100 million grant between Anchorage and Soldotna. So we're working on that, have initial paper due in a couple of weeks, and then we'll do a formal comprehensive application later this summer. So we're excited about that. In addition, the Cooper Landing area really has experienced a lot of outages and difficult terrain to work in. It also is hard for us to mobilize our line crews over there in an efficient way and also mobilize equipment. So we are building a new satellite operations center in the Cooper Landing area. Actually, it's right between the Sunrise Inn and the runway. We could not have asked for a better location. If necessary, during inclement weather events, if there's avalanches, we can get airplane or we can get a helicopter, and we can get our crews over there to do work. We also have sleeping quarters at this location. Incidentally, this supports every facet of utility operations except customer service. So we do have our Cooper Lake hydro project is located very close to this site. We also have extensive transmission lines near this location and lots of distribution lines. So we're excited about having this additional facility. They will be able to address outages and work on our entire service area on the Kenai Peninsula, which includes Moose Pass and Cooper Landing and Hope. We can even, if necessary, go all the way up to Portage as well. But it will house critical equipment and supplies and allow us to mobilize much, much faster. We also did a complete update to our dispatch centers. The dispatch center really is the nerve center of an electric utility. This is where all the decisions are made on how do we dispatch the system from a generation to a transmission to distribution perspective. This is where those decisions are made and the technology is used. And it has to be in a very secure location. It has to have updated technology. Really facilitates the ability for us to respond quickly. We also have a completely redundant dispatch center in a secure location. And our dispatchers can do everything in the backup control center as they can do in our primary control center. In fact, we rotate our dispatchers between both locations to make sure they know how they're comfortable working in either location at all times. And it's been a very, very successful operation. I'm not aware of any other utility in the rail belt that has this type of a structure for dispatch. I want to real quick talk very briefly about some of the member resources that we have available. My account portal, we have, this is an ability, a software package that we have where you can log in, create an account, log in, and you can get direct access to your energy usage, whether it's on a 15-minute basis, an hourly basis. You can do it by day. You can compare how much energy you used this year from a year ago. I always pull it up when my kids come home and say, look, you're costing me a lot more this Christmas, so be aware of that. So it really is a nice software package. You can do a lot with it. It also will give you alerts. If there's a power outage, it'll let you know. We can send you a text. So if you haven't signed up for this, it's something that we highly recommend. In addition, we do have incentive programs for beneficial electrification. We have heat pump pilot program for residential and commercial customers. Residential is, I think, $900 right now. I will say heat pumps are not economic in Anchorage. When you have natural gas that you can heat your house with, it's not an economic decision that you would make. If you lived outside of Anchorage where natural gas is not available and fuel oil is, and that's what you're heating, yes, then I think this is something absolutely to look at. Or if you don't like heating your home with wood, if you're heating with wood and want an alternate source to heat your home, this is absolutely an outstanding technology. They have cold weather heat pumps. They keep getting better and better. There's a test facility up in Fairbanks and here in Anchorage. In fact, a lot of the homes in southeast Alaska have transitioned or are in the process of moving towards heat pumps. They don't have natural gas in Southeast, so it makes sense. And then we also have a incentive program to put in if you have a level 2 charger for your home. That's really a 220-volt charger. We have a $200 member credit that we can provide for that. We all have similar programs on the commercial side. Also, as Director Wiggin mentioned earlier, we have our upcoming member events on May 29th at Change Point. We have first our member appreciation event from 1 to 4 p.m. and we'll have power plant tours of our South Central Power Project, or SPP plant, bucket rides, and we'll have educational booths. We will have a heat pump vendor will be at our event this summer, and then we'll have a display of electric vehicles. And then following that at 4 o'clock, we'll have our annual membership meeting, and I'll provide a report to the membership at that meeting, and we'll present the treasurer's report as well. Election results will be door prizes, and registration opens at 2:30 in the afternoon. We do have 2 proposed bylaw amendments. One is really housekeeping in nature, editorial changes to our bylaws to improve grammar. The second area is that now we have a membership fee that's in our articles of incorporation and in our bylaws. It has never, I don't think it's ever been updated. It's 75 years old, never been updated. We want to take that and have that under the authority of the Chugach Board of Directors to update that on a periodic basis as needed. And those are the 2 changes. In addition, we have 2 board seats that are open. There'll be information that will be emailed out fairly soon. We have 2 winners for free electricity for 1 year, up to 10,000 kilowatt hours. And then the voting will go on for 1 month, beginning April 29th to May 29th. And then there's a UR code to get additional information. These are our 4 board candidates that are running for the election. In addition to that, we do have additional information on our website, on our My Account to pay your bill and receive alerts on outages and usage levels. And then also, we do want to make a push. If you're able to, if you feel comfortable, if you're not on paperless billing, we do provide a one-time $5 credit. If you make that change, we'll put that credit on your electric bill. And we can sign up for it on this UR code. I think that is in My Account. So that's something we want to try to push. That saves us money over the long run. And you can also follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and LinkedIn. So with that, I know I've talked for a long time. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
I think the question is whether tidal energy is a possibility anytime soon. Who has that, Arthur?
So really a very good question. We've been interested in tidal power for decades, and it all comes down to cost. It's not cost effective when we look at the alternative generation resources available. There's a lot of environmental concerns on top of that. We've looked at it to put in tidal power off of some of the oil platforms in the Cook Inlet Basin as well. And that was somewhat thwarted because of the ice that goes through and damages some of the infrastructure. In addition to that, there was some environmental concerns with the whales. And then on top of that, the technology was not proven enough to be really put in commercial operation. And then on top of that was the high cost. So we still remain absolutely interested in, really for that matter, all types of renewable generation. We remain very much interested in. It really is dependent on cost and economic feasibility.
Penny Gage, a candidate for the board, as you saw my photo up on the screen a moment ago. Thank you so much for hosting this town hall. I think we forget sometimes that our utility is a nonprofit cooperative owned by us as members, and so it's really nice that you're coming in front of the public. Given concerns raised by the legislature and the RCA about potentially duplicative LNG import projects in Cook Inlet, can you help the public and ratepayers understand Chugach's LNG import strategy and how that fits alongside the NSTAR Glenfarne project? And how should the public think about the risk and duplicative infrastructure and costs? And I also had a second quick one, if that's okay. The $100 million grant you mentioned for the Anchorage-Soldotna project with DOE. I was curious how that was complementary to the $206.5 million GRIP funding that, of course, we're working on at the state level. Thank you.
Really good question. So I'll start with the really easy one first. That grant is complementary to the undersea cable. There's another, let me back up a little bit. There's two major transmission projects that are underway right now. The rebuild of the transmission line between Anchorage and Soldotna that I mentioned, that a Department of Energy grant opportunity is there for upwards of $100 million. There's another project by the Alaska Energy Authority with the support of all the relevant utilities for an undersea transmission line from Beluga to Nikiski or Soldotna. And that has an estimated price tag around $413 million. 50% of that will be paid by the federal government, and the other 50% by us or Alaska. And these two projects are separate. They're, the $100 million grant for the Anchorage to Soldotna segment cannot be applied to the undersea cable between Beluga and Nikiski or Soldotna. Totally separate. So I'll start on the question on the gas supply, and then I will turn it over to some of my colleagues to supplement what I'm going to say. So I'll start by saying the jurisdiction for how many import terminals are built is under FERC. That's not under the state. That's not dictated by utilities. What is dictated and determined by utilities, really, and the Regulatory Commission of Alaska for that matter, is the cost recovery of any contracts or agreements that are entered into between the utility and either Glen Farm or Harvest. So the two import facilities that are currently under evaluation, one is the Harvest project, and that's really to refurbish the existing terminal that's in Nikiski that was an export terminal and converting it to an import terminal. The other project would be, that's a brownfield site. The other project is a greenfield site that would be built by Glen Farm. And so two separate projects. So the real question is, what is our position regarding one or both of those locations as an import terminal? So let me back up and first say, Chugach wants what's best for our members and what's best for customers in South Central Alaska. I think we have to look at this holistically. That is, what's good for Chugach members is good for, it has to be also good for NSTAR members. We're all NSTAR customers as well. We need to look at it from that type of a perspective. Which project is the better one is the one that we should advance and we should support. Right now, from our perspective, the Harvest facility is constructed. It does require additional capital investment to put it in commercial operation, but that's a proven site. We have been to that location several times. It is older, but it was very well maintained. And you also have a very sophisticated operator of that terminal, Harvest. They've been in the business for a long time. They also have a project up on the North Slope. Also, their leadership owns Hillcorp Alaska as well. They have a lot of background in gas operations. So what we are looking for, we ideally, one project for rate recovery is ideal because then we'll get the greater economies of scale and result in a lower overall cost for all customers in South Central Alaska. And that's what we're getting behind. That is being evaluated by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. They opened up an informational docket earlier this year, and both Chugach and NSTAR submitted testimony in that docket. And I think I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Matt, and then Al, if you want to add to that as well.
And then we're going to go to the gentleman in the red coat who I think has a question. And we have about 10 more minutes for questions, so we want to get in as many as we can.
Sure, very quickly, just wanted to reaffirm what Arthur said about the jurisdictional issue that's been briefed in front of the Commission. The RCA has cost recovery approval authority, FERC has deciding authority. And I think the RCA generally understands that where their authority lies in that respect. So that's a pretty well figured out issue at this point. On the going forward analysis that the Commission is undertaking, in the I-docket, it's really about getting them information because they have some significant decisions to be made here and on an upcoming basis with respect to if there are going to be potentially 1 or 2 LNG import facilities. They have to review the utilities decision-making process, the due diligence efforts that they undertook, and whether or not they're acting as a prudent manager. And ultimately, if they did take those steps, should they be allowed to recover those costs from the ratepayers. So from Chugach's perspective, from NSTAR's perspective, from all interested parties' perspective, we're trying to make sure we're picking a project that delivers gas to us on time. That's been Chugach's key issue from the beginning. We need to know that we can get gas here when we need it. Timing is a big issue for us. And then lowest cost and reliability on a going forward basis. So the Commission knows what the issues are, what's at stake. We appreciate the fact that they've taken the initiative to open the I-docket to start getting information to help really make some important decisions going forward. I'll hand it to you, Al.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Just building on Arthur and Matt's comments, as we've looked at a myriad of alternatives, including some upstream alternatives, other fuel sources over time, LNG was the fastest and most reliable, in our view, the least cost way to bridge this gap, whatever the gap is, whether it's a handful of years or a longer period of time. When we looked at the alternatives in front of us right now, comparing the Greenfield Grand Farm project proposal to the Harvest rebuild, if you will, of that Kenai dock, it's more right-sized. The project at the Kenai project is starting at 20 BCF a year, which is what the near-term gap is for the first 5 to 10 years, and it can be built and scaled up to the entire rail belt's requirement. Compare that to Glen Farm, which is built for LNG exports, and be used as an import proposal project in the early years. It's built 50 times larger. And so when you look at the capital requirements and the overall risk profile, we think the project that Harvest is proposing best fits our needs and provides us greater flexibility longer term to continue our diversification efforts with renewables and other generating sources. So when we look at the overall risk and cost profile, we think the project we're advancing is the one that's going to meet our needs. And we'll continue to work with the regulators on the path forward as time goes on. So we're excited about the project. We believe it can meet the timeline that we need to fill the gap that Arthur described earlier.
Thank you. And we're going to head right here. Do you have
It's okay. My question's answered.
Oh, his question was answered. And I'll just say one of the reasons we're really using the microphones tonight is because we're recording this, and it's going to be eventually available to watch for those who might have missed it or want to watch it again. So that's why we're really trying to focus on making sure everything's recorded. Question right over here.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Going back to when you're talking about the rates versus energy consumption decreasing, there's a slide, rates going up, energy consumption's down like 5% over the past couple of years. I wonder if you have any thoughts to why energy consumption is decreasing, and then also if you can speak to what seems to me to be a kind of chicken and egg situation between rates going up and consumption going down. Because when I see that bill come and it's higher, I go turn off a bunch of lights. And so I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, good question. So I think that we've been in decline in energy consumption, really driven by energy efficiency initiatives. If you remember, we transitioned to LED lighting. That had a significant impact. You're going from a 100-watt or 150-watt bulb to a 20-watt or a 30-watt bulb. That had a significant impact. Also, energy-efficient appliances. But on top of that, Anchorage has not grown. And it really has been somewhat stagnant from a growth perspective. I think we're seeing some of that. On top of that, it's certainly in 2024 to 2025, our a little over 2%, 2.3% reduction in sales was heavily driven by weather. We had unseasonably cold weather in December of last year. However, in January, February, and March, it was unseasonably warm, and we never made up that difference. But those are some of the main driving factors. I think year to year, weather is variation, but then the other items really are more energy efficient stock, and then, with lighting and everything, and then really non-growth economy is having an impact. If you were to look at Matanuska Electric Association service area, they've had a continued growth year after year after year. And that's a significant benefit for utility operations when you have a tremendous amount of fixed assets. That's why it's so important, and we really embrace beneficial electrification, because not only is it good for our customers, you have a lower cost structure, but also we can utilize our electric system in a more efficient way. And we do have a time of use rate, we expect will be implemented first part of next year, and to help us levelize our overall electric load. We don't want everybody charging their electric vehicle 6 o'clock in the evening, on a weekday. We want to levelize that out. So we are going to have a lot more programs as we go forward to try to interact with our members for pricing signals to influence behavior. But those are really, in a nutshell, I think some of the driving factors on the relatively non-existent load growth. I mean, load declines.
What other questions? Probably have time for 2 more questions. Nikki is on the move right there.
Hi, my question is with regard to the Clutna River Mitigation Project. And you've got that in front of you. You're going to be doing environmental, engineering, economic studies. And will those studies, whole and complete, be available to the public, your members, to review them so they can actually give meaningful input?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the Clutna Fish and Wildlife Program was carried out over the last 5 or so years, and much of the information you're looking for is available at clutnahydro.com. So most of the fish studies and studies as far as the alternatives go were completed prior to 2024 when the program was submitted to the governor for approval. And so all of that is really in a more of an execution phase. So we're just in the middle of designing the water release facility, bridges for traversing the river as we put water back into the river. And then additionally, right now we're carrying out the pump storage hydro study with the municipality. So I think much of what you're looking for is available at clutnahydro.com if you're looking for more detail. I'm not sure about the answer to that. That is something we're carrying on with the municipality, and they're leading that effort, and we're participating with them. I would expect much of that to be available at some point in time, but I don't know the answer unless, Julie, you have that.
Well, the municipality is leading those studies, so we'd assume when they're done, they will be available to the public, but they've taken the lead on that as we work on the Fish and Wildlife Program. But the Clutna Hydro site is still up, and we're actually going to be adding to it as the final program moves forward.
Hi all, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you being here. I also have a question about the Clutna Fish and Wildlife Program, and I was wondering if there are key decision points or deadlines in that execution process going forward, and if there's, points for the public to weigh in on any of that. I know that there's potentially permitting processes for that going forward. I was just wondering if you could kind of walk through that timeline.
Yeah, so the timeline, much of the work for the study for the 1991 Fish and Wildlife Agreement has been completed over the last several years. I think it was about 5 years in the making. And at this point, the governor has an approved plan that we're more or less implementing at this point in time. So there will be a permitting process for the water release facility, building the bridges and whatnot. But for the most part, that the work is sort of set as to what the plan is, unless the pump storage hydro project does become viable. And that is something, as Julie said, the municipality's leading. We're working with them on it, and I'm assuming that will become available at a later date and time when it's released to the Adaptive Management Committee that was set up as a part of this program to review this.
So I'm going to say we have time for one more question because we have to put this room back together and be out of here by 8 o'clock. So can we take one more question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I know you can't share too many numbers or specific details regarding ongoing commercial negotiations, but as a ratepayer, I'm just kind of curious about future projections for gas prices and what that means for our electricity rates, and certainly, heating rates in South Central as well. So I'm curious, as you guys are going into those negotiations, are you optimizing for shorter term, longer term, and also variable or fixed price type contracts? Thank you.
Very good question. So there's different components when you're looking at importing liquefied natural gas. You have the terminal fee itself, And that really, for the most part, is a fixed fee that would probably vary by throughput, how many participants are part of that project, where you'd have different prices based on the throughput. But it's similar to building a power plant that whether you sell 1 kilowatt hour or 20 million kilowatt hours, this is, your fixed costs are sunk. So that's how that's being looked at. Then there's also the other aspect, that's the upstream supply side. That cost would most likely, most of it will be variable, depending on what's shipped in. Your question is spot on. What is the rate impact? Now, right now, it's very preliminary, but if we were to look at a range of different pricing options that we have seen, we are probably looking at somewhere between 12 and 24% increase on electric bills, somewhere in that area. But I will say we're doing everything we can to minimize that rate impact. But right now, with what we know, it's a fairly wide range, but there's a lot of uncertainties in the marketplace at this time.
And thank you again so much for coming tonight. And we will have this posted on our YouTube channel here in the next few days. So thank you.